Yeah, well, like, okay, let's test that out. Ronnie, why did you start sticking a needle in your arm?
Why? Well, I started smoking pot when I was about 15. You know, one, because I just saw a whole bunch of kids doing it, and I didn't want to be uncool. I really didn't. I thought I wouldn't be accepted. So I just said...
Now, I wonder where that acceptance or the idea of you have to be accepted comes from.
I didn't want to walk by myself down the street, and I never thought I'd be accepted unless I did what everybody else did.
You mean like all the other kids were doing it?
Yeah, all the other kids were doing it, you know, on my corner. The kids that I thought were cool. Because I had read in a lot of newspapers, you know, about LSD and all, and about pot, and I wanted to try it too. Because it was very interesting to me. You know, you do this, you go to California because you make $100 dealing. You know, I thought it was something beautiful. I thought it was something that would, you know, enlighten me, you know, make me see the world better. That's what I thought.
Where did you get that idea from? I don't understand that.
Well, I had read a lot of magazines. I was a very, you know, good reader at the time. And I was always interested in drugs or anything that was a little bit different. Anything that was out of the ordinary, because I thought I was going to be a writer. This is my rationale for it.
You mean in the magazine said you should smoke pot?
Well, it didn't say it, but it kind of implied it. When I read it and it said, yeah, well, you know, he went here and he went to Europe and Tangier. And I thought it was pretty glamorous doing all these things and having long hair, you know, being able to buy earrings when you felt like it, because all you had to do was just sit down and deal drugs. Yeah, I didn't realize the rest of the stuff. You know, like even though the charges were there, like you may go to jail for 5 years. I didn't really think very much of it because I didn't really care about that.
How'd you get into art?
I don't know, I guess I was the type of person that it didn't matter what the gang was doing, you know, I would do it. You know, so I guess it's to say that if the thing would have been at that time jumping off of bridges, instead of being a drug addict, you know, I would have been a bridge addict. You know, that's kind of how I felt about myself, and that I had to be accepted in a gang, you know, at any cost, man. This meant that if I was standing on a corner and something went down, that I felt so bad about myself that I sort of had to be a part of it. In any way, shape, or form, you know, I had to kind of go along with it. Because I couldn't let anybody know, you know, that I was pretty afraid. You know, that I was pretty afraid to show the guys that, you know, I feared going down to the, you know, the neighborhood center, fighting. You know, so what I do, I just go ahead. And the drugs kind of gave me the false security or the false hope, you know, that I could make it.
All right, now, but look, the both of you have said that you wanted to do, you know, what everybody else did. How come? Why did you want to do what everybody else did? I mean, we're supposed to be taught like you're supposed to be different, you're supposed to be individual, so on. How come you wanted to do what everybody else did?
Because I felt so unique, I think, that I didn't like this feeling of being different than everybody else. I was someplace burying my head in a book, and everybody else was doing the same thing. And every place I went, I felt different, as though my feelings were unique, as though I was different. Someplace I needed to be part of something.
Well, what about your family? Weren't you part of your family?
That's a tough question. No, I didn't do anything in my family. I was a lazy bum. Yeah, I really didn't do much. And at one point I hated my mother. Like when I was 14, I asked my mother to sit down and talk to me. And she said, yeah, later. So I went and swallowed 8 aspirins, you know? And like it was crazy because I didn't really want to die, but I wanted some attention. I didn't really feel part there because every time my mother would get mad at me, I'd go storming out the door, you know, kind of take a walk around the block, go down to the creek and look at the water.
Yeah,
you know,
the creek. The kind of attention you get though is like, well, here's $3, you know, or here's $2, or here's $5. You know, why don't you go see a show or something?
I went to a few psychiatrists, you know, when I told my mother I was messed up. You know, she handed me $25,000. Here's a nice psychiatrist, sit down and talk.
Yeah, talk.
You mean like...
Yeah, and I told the psychiatrist to go you know where, and I walked. You know, because all I did was run.
Yeah, well, I'm on the receiving end of that all the time. You know, it's like, you know, he's my son if everything's all right. But if anything goes wrong, Doc, you take care of it. You know, you talk to him, you set him straight, and then you send him back to me. It's like, you know, defective goods that I should repair.
Well, you know what my psychiatrist used to tell me? He used to go, well, I can't help you, you know, the problem at home. He used to tell me about time and a whole bunch of lot of other nonsense. I never understood. Then when I was 2 years old, I was dropped on the head, that type of thing. You know?
That was why you used drugs.
Yeah. You know, I said, okay, now I know that I'm schizophrenic, I'm neurotic, so now I can continue using drugs, you know, because that's what I thought I was.
You know, it somehow avoids my ability to understand how people look all over for answers.
Oh.
You know, they look all over the place for answers. They don't even stop to think, gee, you know, why don't I just ask the kid what's happening? You know, why don't I sit down and say, hey, how come you're doing this? You know what I mean? They want to send them to a psychiatrist, and where did we go wrong, and it's a traumatic thing. Why don't they just ask them?
That's too simple. You know, it's like when I was a resident, they used to bring in the patients, and then the neurosurgeon used to see them, and if they moved all four extremities, he used to say to me, okay, now you talk to him, you know, because we don't talk to people.
I used to try to mess up my psychiatrist by coming late, you know. I'd say, ha, this is because I don't like you. You know, and I try to do everything to make him go batty, because I just didn't like the idea of coming 1 hour, once a week, and this is the time to relate. Now you talk about your problems. My problems went on 24 hours a day, you know, and that 1 hour didn't do much.
Well, in my family, I was very much a part of my family. I had 6 sisters, and I was the only boy. You know, so the attention I got, and usually it was, well, baby, everything's gonna be fine. You know, you still have a long way to go. And I used to act out and do all sorts of crazy things. Now my mother would say, well, you're the only boy, you know, you got a certain responsibility, but yet and still she would contribute to just about everything that was going on, man. And I used to see her, you know, popping pills, man. She had her pills, you know, lined up on the dresser, 3 and 4, you know, in a spot. And then she found out I was popping pills, and you know, she hit the rooftop, man. She was blowing up, man. Where did I get this idea from? Where did this thing come from?
You must have got it from those friends of yours, right?
That's right.
My mother did the same thing. My mother was taking diet pills for a period of about 2 years. And she'd come, you know, in the morning she'd line up 6 different pills, one for that. I took her pills one time. I was higher than a kite. I don't know how she did it. And if she didn't take her pills, at home, she'd come home about 5 o'clock in the evening from work, turn on the TV set, and eat her Indian nuts. You know, that's what she'd do.
Well, now look, you know, there's something funny though. Now, like you're saying that you didn't get enough attention from your family, and so you used drugs, and you're saying that you got too much attention from your family and you used drugs.
Well,
But,
that's not true. I got a lot of attention, you know, in the sense that I had a wardrobe that was unbelievable at one point, you know, and I went to camp and I went to private school. Every time I threw a tantrum, I got my way.
I think attention's a poor choice of words.
Yeah.
I think that, not attention, but well, I know what I was looking for was a recognition that that I was worth something. That if I said, hey, you know, I need to talk to somebody, that someone felt that it was important enough. So I think there's more recognition as a person.
Are you saying, Ronnie, that you're kind of bought off by
Yeah,
your
I got
family?
the attention in the sense that I got money and got a bigger allowance than anybody else did in my family, but I didn't get the attention of sitting down and being talked to on a person-to-person level.
Ain't that the classic thing? But what did I do wrong? I gave him
I
everything.
gave-
he
yeah.
wanted.
My mother
Money,
still, listen to
wow.
this, my mother still doesn't believe she did anything wrong. You know, she calls up, or I speak to her now that I've been in the house a while, you know, she still doesn't believe I'm a dope fiend, that I was one. You know, she
Yeah,
says it was a guy next
it
to me.
couldn't happen
No,
to
it
my
couldn't
little-
happen to
my
my nice
little
little
girl.
Jewish girl, you know, that went to private school and all and played tennis.
Yeah, because we went to all the right schools and so on and so forth, so it couldn't happen.
Yeah, how could they be messed up?
Yeah.
Usually if my attention was, if I did something, it was similar to Ronnie's. Usually instead of, you know, saying, hey, you know, knock that crap off, it was usually condoning it. And it was covered up in, you know, all sorts of ways, you know. Like I say, hey, I want a car. You know, then I lived in a pretty middle class neighborhood. So, you know, my people being black, you know, they sort of had to keep up with the Joneses. So the kid down the street got a car when he was 18. So my mother felt as though, you know, they would talk about us, you know, if I didn't get it. So what happened, I got it. I really didn't care about it because I knew the reasons why I got it. But, you know, she could never see that. You know, all she would say is, well, I'm going to give you everything that I didn't have, all the things that I was deprived.
But what was wrong with that, Horace? What was wrong with that? I mean, here's a mother trying to do something for a kid. What's wrong with that?
Well, during that time, I would have been just as happy, you know, with a birthday card. You know, something that would have been from her. You know, something that would say, hey, we love you, and not because of, you know, X, X, and X. You know, something that was sort of came from her.
You mean she didn't give you the car for you? She gave it
For the
because
neighbors.
of the neighbors.
Because the
Right.
neighbor's kid had got a car, you know, this is the reason why I got it.
Yeah, and if somebody else had happened to be her son, they would have got a car too.
Sure.
And it didn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah, you know, there's an interesting thing about it. Is, you know, you said that, and I said, well, same thing happened to me. You know, getting things. And then when you ask that question, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think the important factor in there is deserving. Is deserving. In other words, people, you know, it seems to me, I'm a person, I guess people are like that. Everybody I know is like that. That when they get something, they have to be able to feel that they, you know, earned it. That they have the right to have gotten that. Now, I was given all of the things, but nobody ever demanded of me that I do things, take out the garbage, do something to earn that.
Now, you wouldn't go so far as to suggest that parents not give their kids things if they don't deserve it. I mean, you know, wow, that's a new concept.
Yeah, well, that's great. How can you feel at all good about yourself? You know, if people just constantly give you things, it's like the welfare system. You know, a person comes in, they need help, the welfare worker does all this stuff for them. The welfare worker goes home and says, boy, I feel great. Look at what I did for so-and-so. So-and-so who came in there can't go home and say, I feel great, look what I did for myself.
Yeah.
They can't say they did anything. Not one thing. And the same thing applies in a family structure. People have to feel that they deserve it. They have the right to get that thing.
Does that sound,
Yeah, I never felt as though I deserved anything, because I didn't in reality. My mother used to ask me to throw out the trash. I go, yeah, lady. You know, later. And later the trash would be piled up twice as high. You know, I never did anything.
why didn't your mother or your family want to make demands on you?
I'm still trying to find that out. I have to challenge her on that. Why? I guess she was lazy too, and been exerting herself.
I got
Part
it.
of it.
Part of an answer, or what I think might be an answer, is I know in my family situation, and it seems to be not unusual in families today, where mommy and daddy are staying together more for the fact that they have children than they really want to stay together. So that what happens is you get kids playing one against the other. Now, mommy is not getting, you know, good feelings and stuff from daddy. She's already got one person pushed aside from her. So then what happens is that both parents have something to gain by not making enemies of the kid, because they've got enough, you know, they come home and it's tense between the two of them, you know, the mother and
Yeah.
father. They don't want the house to be a totally tense thing.
Yeah, well, you know, I think there's another thing too. Like, I know in my family, nobody ever really made too many demands on me. And I think one of the reasons is, what happens to a kid when you make demands on him? He grows up.
He may not love you too.
He may not love you, and he'll grow up and he'll leave you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I believe that my mother wanted exactly as I grew up, except for the fact without shooting dough. I don't think my mother's that stupid, but I think she planned almost to have me dependent, because I was her only daughter, like Horace. I had 3 brothers, and the idea was for her only daughter to support her later on in life, that she was supposed to come live with her. Only daughter was supposed to be good to her. When I moved out of my house and I lived with my sister-in-law, my mother used to call up on the telephone and say, you know, what a good daughter you are. You know, you're away from me, and here I am all alone because I didn't have a father. You know, I used to get messed up. I used
Make
to
you
wind
feel
up.
guilty.
Yeah, I used to wind up running upstairs crying, and I didn't know who to cry to. You know, I used to just like be by myself, crying until somebody like acknowledged me.
You know, usually in my family, like, I didn't see my father that often. You know, he'd come home every now and then. You know, and I'd see him. Usually he'd be drunk or something. You know, he'd come in, he'd probably slap my mother a lot of times. Then they'd get into a whole big thing. You know, I used to see all of this. You know, then when it came time when I did something, you know, I guess my mother felt a little guilty, man. You know, maybe the ways that they were acting out. And then when I'd come home with a problem, she really couldn't tell me anything, you know, because kind of she was sort of, you know, in a way doing a lot of the things, man, that she was telling me not to do. All the things that she was telling me not to do, you know, she would, you know, sort of contribute to it and do it, man.
Doing the same things is right, because my mother was using drugs. You You know, no matter how you look at it, even though it was a prescription. You know, she was using, I don't even think it was a prescription. I think she went to the doctor and there was a tape recorder, one of those type of, doctors.
Wait, you remember what we were talking about before? I said that commercial. So here's these two guys at work, and one says, "Hey, how come you're so calm, George?" And George says, "Well, when I get up in the morning and I'm shaving, I'm listening to the radio, I hear about the Middle East tensions and the race riots, and I get pretty upset about it. But then I take 2 of these here pills that'll calm me down." He says, "I don't take them every day, so it's trying to say I'm not an addict." So then the guy says, "Oh yeah, does it really work?" He says, "Sure, I take a couple of these here pills, and these are the words he uses. He says, and then it just doesn't seem to bother me as much." And he says, "Oh yeah, really, does it work? I'm going to try that." The end of the commercial. Now people will listen. They'll sit and listen to a commercial like this. Their kids are hearing it. Everybody's hearing it. It's saying, use drugs if you get uptight about what's going on in the world.
It's okay to escape.
Right.
That's the way to
Just
do
go,
it.
run.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
then what'll happen is nobody will make a big stink about that. Nobody will say anything about that. But you get some kid who's getting pressures because of things like this, smoke some pot, and they'll lock him up for 3 years, ruin his life, his career, everything. They'll say something about that. Or even if his hair is long, they'll say something.
But
But
what's so
nothing
bad
about
about
their peer group.
What's so bad about threatening them or locking them up? How do people come to the house?
How do they come to the house?
Yeah, what's their motive to come to the house?
Yeah, but think about it. Why does it have to get to that point?
Yeah, but
How
I-
is it allowed to get to that point where the kid has to be threatened with jail? That's a pretty bad scene.
You mean like something ought to be done before then?
Yeah, right.
All right, what would you suggest?
Well, the biggest difficulty is getting people to think about what they're doing, to think about what's going on, to say something. If you have a community meeting about anything, just call a community meeting in any community anywhere about anything. If you get 40 people to turn out for that meeting, and it could be a very serious thing going on in the community, if you get 40 people, you're lucky. Nobody wants to exert themselves. They just do not. They think that going to work is doing their thing. They don't think that they can separate themselves from the community they live in. Or if my kid's not doing it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's not
right.
my
Yeah,
problem.
that's right.
You know, like the community, nobody exerting themselves. Yesterday I went to court with somebody from the house, and I walked into the courtroom, and I saw all the policemen on one side, and I saw all the black people on the other side, and in the middle a few mixtures. I said, my God, are they going up in war? What's gonna happen here?
We're going to have a fight.
Yeah, that's what, and everybody's sitting there just, kind of slouched down in the chair, listening to the judge, nodding out, falling asleep or whatnot. But nobody really saw what was going on, and I got uptight.
All right, but what could be done in the family, like in your family, Horace? What could have been done to stop you from doing what you were doing?
I think if it had been a lot more communication, a lot more sitting down and saying, hey, this is the thing to do. This is the way to go about it, and really talk about it. Not from a parent, or a kid to parent thing, but really sitting down and really talking about it. And also, like, in my
But
family...
do you think talking would have gotten it for you?
Let me
Do
give
you
you
think you would have changed from, because I was told a lot of things, Now, listen, Ronnie, you shouldn't use drugs because you make wind up a big horrible dope fiend in Needle Park or someplace like that, slouched over, weighing 99 pounds. That's not what happened to me.
Right, but
So
you know what I
it was
think
okay.
would work? You know what I think would work, though? Two of the people that are in community groups have a Sunday family meeting. And it's an encounter. They sit down.
What, the whole family?
Yeah, the whole family. And the kids say, hey, how come you did this and that? And they confront each other. The kids feel free enough to say to their parents, hey, you were wrong. The parents are willing that if they were wrong to admit, yeah, I was wrong. There's a
And
trust
change it.
building there.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you just talk, and then I think what everybody's saying is, if you do something different, if you say, yeah, it's bad, yeah, I
And
did
you
that and it was
continue.
wrong, and then you continue right on doing it, no good, You've
Also-
got to do what you say you're going to do.
Also,
Yeah.
Also, the thing with, just talking doesn't get it. It
Right.
has to be something taken away almost at times. I couldn't have been handed all those things doing what I was doing.
Yeah, like my mother used to say to me all the time, gee, you're a spoiled kid. We're going to
Yeah.
discipline you in some way. And I used to say, oh, don't do that. And it was never done. It was
Right.
never done, So the talking didn't do much good because I knew that, if I just said, don't do that, it wouldn't happen, and I could get away with it all.
My mother used to say she's going to light a candle for me and disown me. I was dead. This is when I went away every time.
Usually around those times, like the things that I got, I really should have got a good kick in the pants, but instead I got, hey, well, all right, everything will be all right. And also something else, not only talking about it, but you sort of need something to look up to. These are the things that I want to be. So I think it needs a lot more people in commanding roles. A lot more people that say, hey, I want to be like him. Not like the other guy, not like this, not like that, but I know my old man is straight, and I want to be like him. Not only does he tell me some dynamite things, but he does them.
Yeah, I looked at my mother, and she weighed 200 pounds, and her hair was never set. Even though she took a bath, she used to scratch to death where she had, blood pouring down her legs sometimes, and she used drugs, and all the rest of this stuff. And, this is my role model.
Well, and like, you say your father was not around because he was drunk and so on. My father was not around because he was a physician. And it's, it's the same thing.
It's just
as bad.
But I can't blame it on my mother. It sounds as though I'm blaming it all on my mother, and I can't do that because I did it. I was the only one who meant to deal with it that way. Like what I said before about it wasn't my mother who used drugs, who forced me to use it. It was me. I did it to myself. Even though I saw all these things around me that were wrong, I chose not to deal with it and maybe change some of it. Instead, I try to manipulate my way out of it. If I saw something messed up in school, I just wouldn't go to school. I didn't like it because I didn't like what they were teaching me, how they were doing it. I used to bad rap the system. I used to tell them how horrible it was. And so I didn't go. Instead of staying there and maybe getting something together with a few of the kids and doing something, I instead went out and got high.
Wasn't that what you saw was wrong? You perceived it right, you saw it right, but that didn't mean you had to do what you did.
Yeah, that's, I didn't feel it was right. Because I wasn't getting a lot of things that I knew I should have been. There was something missing from the way people were teaching me, I felt. I don't think I was that unaware of it.
No, I think when I was 12 years old and started using drugs, I knew, or I could see then, a lot of the stuff that I see now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I couldn't explain it as good then, but I saw it, that all these things are wrong. But instead of being smart enough to say, hey, well, all right, look at what these people are doing, and look at what it's done for them. It hasn't done anything for them, but made them kind of miserable. What am I going to go out and do that for? So that the difference between then and now is that I still see the same things, only try to do something about it, instead of use it as a reason to do the things that I want to do that are wrong.
I think I even knew that because my girlfriend and I remember talking about, well, even a bum has some purpose in this world. You can say that, don't be like him. But I still chose not to, to change it. I chose to be like him. If he was doing it, why not me? Because I wanted to get high. It made me feel good because I felt pretty bad.
I had the biggest, or let's say the best cop-out, being black. Really, like if I went to get a job or something, I didn't have to look at a lot of things about myself. If I went to get a job and I went to get it with a white guy, and if he got it, then maybe on some levels he got it because he was white. But then I didn't have to look at all my inadequacies, or maybe I couldn't do the job. I could very easily say, well, hey, he got it because he was white. And I use that cop-out, a whole lot, man.
Well, it's the same thing with being Jewish. You can do the same thing with that, right?
Well, not even being Jewish all the time, because I lived in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn is mostly Jewish, so I didn't feel that as much. Just being a woman, I felt a lot of the things that Horace felt. Saying, well, a woman can't get ahead, there's no such thing as equality. And I can't do what a man could do. They're going to make me sit down a certain way, make me wear certain clothes. I'm going to cop out too, because I want to be just as aggressive as Horace is, and I want to do the same things. That's what I feel incapable of.
Seems like you worked through that.
I did now. Now
so,
I did.
If I can't do what I want to do, the only solution is to
I was
shoot
supposed
dope.
to be a weak, dependent creature, and I wasn't that way, And everybody wanted me to come, walking up to them going, oh, could you help me? And I used to walk around with books, 10 feet high, piling them up, because I didn't like guys to help me. I wanted to do it myself.
Yeah.
And yet when it came to getting a job, it was a little bit different.
Well, you know what's very disturbing, though, that I remember, it still exists, is that there seems to be a whole selling short, a whole bunch of people selling themselves short. You'll get a guy, an
that's what
average
we do.
citizen, lives in a community, he'll walk by a corner, and he'll see a bunch of kids from that neighborhood. They might be drunk, they might be high on goofballs, they might be doing something, but he can see that something is wrong. And he'll say, well, what can I do about it? I can't do anything about that. So now, here's this guy, he's got to walk around feeling that he can't do anything about that. And he's got to feel bad about it, I'm sure. So that what happens then is what's happening what's going on is people trying and find other ways to make themselves feel better. A Cadillac, like I said before, why
my
you shoot
sister-in-law and
dope?
my
It's better
brother.
than Cadillacs.
My sister and my brother, they got a $50,000 house now. She put a mink stove, she got her diamond ring. And my brother feels better. He said he raised himself above, his product, his home. He came out of that and stepped into the suburbia. Where he walks down in the morning, picks up the newspaper, and starts reading away while his wife is sitting there.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that the values or the way of life that, let's say, my parents at least, were taught to be the way to do it, my generation, we're not buying it, just not buying it, because it's so obviously full of holes. And so then there's the lack of understanding. The kid says, well, how can you buy that stuff? But, mommy and daddy were brought up to believe that's the way you do it. And then mommy and daddy say, but what do you mean that's not the right way? Of course this is the right way. You're doing it the wrong way. And nobody wants to sit down and say, hey, what the hell are both of us doing? What's this all about?
Yeah, it's like they're saying, there are two ways to do things, my way and the wrong way.
Yeah,
Most
exactly.
people do it, my way.
Exactly.
Let's face it, man. Like, success is money. Whatever happens to just being, people, man. Because if you sit down and talk, usually when I sit down with my parents, the times that I did, maybe we were discussing a drug problem, it would usually end up with a lot of the social things that were going on around. It would usually end up me talking about a lot of the things that I've seen. We used to get in a lot of discussion about pot and liquor and doing it and being very involved in it. I had to think of all the rationales. I had to know of all the rationales in order for me to, how do you say, compensate for all the things that I was doing. But now I've kind of learned that, it was a lot of difference. It was a lot of different in motivations. Not even looking at, the physical aspect of it. Like smoking pot, man, let's face it. You suffer a social thing, man. Because you can sort of drink liquor and not suffer anything socially. But smoking pot, man, like I was putting myself in a position, to suffer a lot of consequences, man.
Yeah, right.
That's a shame that that's true, though. That's a shame that, this is this crazy set of standards. It says, this chemical's good, this chemical's bad. And what they're saying is the kids are running away, they're escaping reality. And the truth of the matter is that there's a whole trend, like we were talking about, of using chemicals to run away.
Or externals, any
Yeah,
external,
I don't think people ought to smoke pot. I don't think it ought to be legalized because, who the hell needs another way for people to get around facing what's going on?
They already have money. When you said values, my belly did a flip. There's only one value, money.
So, like the problem for the kids is to find out a way to make it in their own way, not necessarily the way their parents made it. And a problem for the parents is to let them make it in their own way, but not necessarily to let them make it in a bad way, like by using drugs or something like
Well,
that.
how did you do?
Right.
Did you make it in your own way? Didn't you change some of the things that your father was showing you? How'd you do that?
I don't think I really did in a way, because I think what I did was I kind of, in a sense, copped out by becoming like my father, a physician too, you see. And that was really the path of least resistance. Now, my brother, on the other hand, didn't take that path and suffered a lot of grief because of it, but eventually arrived at something, and I think I did too. But you know,
Yeah.
I took a way out of it, which was perhaps for me the easiest way out.
Yeah. Well, you know what we mentioned, kids spend a lot of time in school. They spend the whole day in school. And there was a teacher that I had in junior high school that I liked him. I really liked him. He was a young guy. He seemed to me to have a willingness to talk about things that I didn't find anywhere else. And I would talk to him, and I was beginning to build a trust in him as a friend, because that's what I was looking for anyway. And one day I did something crazy in the classroom, and he called me outside the classroom. And he said, "Let me see your hands." I thought he was losing his mind. I showed him my hands, and he said, "Look," he said, "you don't have any calluses on your hands." He said, "If you don't do good in this school, you're going to be a ditch digger. You're going to have calluses on your hands. You're going to be one of them people." And at that point, what ran through my mind is, what do you mean one of them people? I could imagine if there wasn't one of them people out there laying pipes so that he'd have a toilet, what he'd then think of one of them people. But his standard of people was measured by the amount of money that they made. And at that point, I said, boy, this guy's got nothing going for himself. Nothing. He's just as shallow. He's just as insensitive. He's just as messed up as everybody else. He thinks that, you know, he looks in your back pocket and sees how fat your wallet is. And that decides whether or not you're a good person. Young people ain't buying it. Well, one of the things, you know, too, is that I don't know if I would like to be. I think being a parent today is a rather unenviable position.
What do you mean?
Well, simply because, let's take like my parents, right? They could sit down and map out the same beefs that I have with them that they had with their parents, so that they were not taught either. And they were probably inadequate then when it was time for them to be parents. So how could they deal with me? And you've got a funny situation now where we can go all the way to the moon and overcoming all of the problems involved in going from here to the moon, but they can't overcome the problems of people in their country who don't have enough food to eat.
Appalachia.
Yeah, and it's very confusing. You've got a young person today who's got to think about all of the advances and the threat of war, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but you know, getting to the moon, that's a nuts and bolts problem. That's fairly easy to solve. It's when you're talking to people who have feelings and you're dealing with, you know, the feelings of parents about their kids and the feelings of kids about their parents. That's been a difficult thing from the beginning of time.
Sure.
And that's a lot tougher to deal with than, you know, putting the right screws together to get to the moon. That's simple.
Well, they see, I know at least my parents, there was no flexibility taught to them. Flexibility that would, you know, allow them to change, to think a different way at some time as the world changed. And the young people today who are running around saying, well, you know, you're drinking, I'm going to smoke pot, are in for a big shock when their kid comes to them and says, well, you're smoking pot, I want to shoot heroin.
Right.
Right.
Do you know
It's the same, that kind of thinking is going to keep the negative things that is meant when it said the establishment. It's just going to be another establishment. Only their details will be a little different.
Well, you know, it's a whole different thing for us. Like, you know, most of our parents grew up at a time when things were real bad, like the Depression.
Yeah.
I've heard my father talk again and again about the Depression. And my father's father was an immigrant who came to this country with no money at all. And it isn't really too surprising that, you know, coming through experiences like that, the big thing should be, man, you got to be sure that you're safe, you got enough money, and when you're old, you know, you're not going to be abandoned. And I can understand that. At the same time, you know, things are different now, and we didn't grow up in that experience, and, you know, young kids want something different. And they should be allowed to get it. And I think that's where a lot of the trouble is.
Yeah, the thing that I was taught that only the strong survives. You know, meaning
that why you're so
whether or
big?
not you would had to, you know, scrape bait or whatever you had to do, man. The thing was to get it. It really didn't matter what the means was or how you had to go and get it.
Or
That
who
means
you
if you had
stepped
to
on.
step on 10 people to get $1, then you step on 10 people. And you know, this is what I heard constantly. Only the strong survives.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking of when you were talking, Bobby, about, you know, what was passed down. Because my mother was told that she was to marry money. That was her goal in life, and
Yeah.
the only reason she's living is to marry money. So she married my father, and she found out the poor guy didn't have that much. And she became a frustrated old lady. And, and he passed it down to me, that I was to marry a nice young doctor. This is what I was to marry. Anything outside of a doctor, you should only marry a doctor. That was what it was like. And my mother said, if I don't marry money, and I happened to fall in love with a guy that didn't have much money. He wasn't a millionaire.
In fact, he was a dope fiend.
And my mother, wow, said my daughter's, I finally showed her that I needed help, really. She said, this is it. You're not living up to my standards,
Yeah, well, I think that it's important because you said before about, this stereotype drug addict monster.
Right.
I think a lot of parents will avoid, they'll deny that their kid's using drugs, in spite of seeing some signs that say that the kid is, because of having to accept then what they've been told about this monster. And instead of being able to look at it and say, well, hey, my kid is using some drugs. Something is seriously wrong. Not something that can't ever be righted, but something is seriously wrong, and I've got to find out what it is, and I've got to do something about it. They'll deny it and deny it and deny it.
Well, they do worse than that. 99% of the parents who come to my office with their kids are giving their kids money to buy dope with.
That's my mother.
And
so they shouldn't steal.
Right. Well, there are a lot of
I got my
reasons,
allowance went up.
That's the usual thing. Or so they, I'd rather have him do it that way than get hit in the head when he steals or something like that. But one of the things that becomes very clear, I remember the first day that my wife let my little girl go outside by herself. And I remember how I felt when I realized that, my God, my little girl, somebody might run over her, somebody might hit her, she might fall down, and so on and so forth. And I really went through a whole thing. And then I said, well, really, there does have to come a time when she's going to have to go out of the house without daddy or mommy, watching over her. Now, I think, when you talk to these parents who are giving their kids money for drugs, what you find out is that does something. That helps that parent. What does it help the parent? Helps the parent to keep the kid at home and dependent on them. They don't want the kid, just like I didn't want my kid to grow up. Really, I don't, because I'll miss her when she's gone. But, that's a way of doing it in a way. Maybe they don't realize it, but that's a way of doing it without actually saying you're doing it, And, I've seen dozens of, 20, 22, 30-year-old kids, really. They have to stay at home because they're on drugs, and they can't get off the drugs. And part of the reason for that is that they're being supported in their habits by their parents.
My mother used to see the pipes, my drawers and the rolling paper, and throw it out. That's all she'd do. Or she'd leave it on my bed. And then she'd see me come home, and I was dressed okay. I looked fairly healthy. I did okay in school. My marks weren't that bad. I wasn't being thrown out of school. So she never wanted to look at the fact that I was a drug addict, that I was a dope fiend. I told you, she still doesn't accept it.
Yeah.
I guess it goes back to really not being informed, or really not going through the changes of being informed and giving a lot of, off the top answers. Because I remember one incident that it was pretty important to me, that all the kids in my neighborhood were wearing black shoes, and I wanted to put white polish around the soles of my shoes. So instead of, it was little, but instead of talking about it, my mother's answer was that it's going to wear your soles out quicker if you put white shoe polish around your soles. Then I hear so many parents say, look, if you take this, your leg is going to fall off. Something's going to happen to you. Your eye is going to fall out.
Right.
The kid uses drugs, and then he wakes up in the morning, his leg is still there. And his arms and everything is still intact.
Didn't fall.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of baloney where the boogeyman's gonna come and get you at night.
That's right.
And you wake up and the boogeyman didn't come and get you. What Horace is saying is so true. That all these fairy tale stories everybody tells you, and you find out they're not true. So why should you listen to the stories about drug abuse?
Yeah.
Right.
Why should I? I used to go, what the heck? It doesn't happen. But what did happen? There was a whole lot that did happen. I almost went to jail. A few times I stood up against the car, being searched, and I was just lucky. Maybe because I am a girl and they couldn't find it too good. But, I was pretty lucky. And I could have been dead. That's just where it's at.
Well, I think that's what I know I was asking for, and that's what a lot of young people are asking for, is a more honest relationship. You know, just simply that, a more honest relationship, one of give and take, and that instead of a parent having to say, you have to do this, like you said before, not demand respect, command respect by your very behavior. And I think that it's time too that you know, kids got to start taking a look at things and saying, hey, it can't all be their fault. What's
Right.
my part in it?
Right. My part was that I did it.
There's another thing too, you know, parents I think sometimes don't want to say, I don't know the answers. That's a mistake. You say, I don't know, but let's you and I find out. Like, let's go together and look for the answer. And that can do more for the relationship than anything I know of.
Let's sit and talk as two people, not child and parent or anything like that.